Hello, people. So it's the 14th of April 2021. This is a video I've wanted to make for a while. I might have touched on it before, but it's always worth kind of reiterating some of the points. And today is actually kind of significant because I've done a little bit of maths, and today marks exactly 13,000 years that I have been alive. So I'm 35 and 7 months. That's 13,000 days to the day. I've done the maths and I worked that out. I've taken this little thing whereby I'm going to mark every thousandth day, almost akin to a birthday, kind of a way to just take stock of where I'm at, what I want to do, how I feel about my life. And it's an interesting little experiment. Every thousandth day is roughly every um, 2.5 years, roughly speaking. Or maybe let's see, 365 days a year. Yeah, you could do the maths, but it's just under 3 years. So it's a good point to sort of reflect on things. I want to talk in this video a little bit about age and generations and perception of these things, because actually, I think it's something that's maybe under discussed. Um, so this is all my perspective. People might have another experience. I'm 35. I know that some of my subscribers are older than that because they've told me. I may have a few subscribers that are under that age. I haven't looked at the demographics, at least not recently, so I'm not sure what sort of age group my main subscribers would fit into. I would imagine the last time I checked, I think it was mostly men and mostly between the ages of 25 and 50. But I need to check that again. So I don't know whether it's just the content I talk about interests that particular demographic or what, but that's it. Um, I'm a millennial, and I'm very happy to be a millennial. One thing I think it's unfortunate that is unfortunate is that millennial now is sort of seen as a byword for a certain kind of political outlook, namely so-called woke ideology. And I think that's unfortunate because millennial simply denotes a generation. If you were born between roughly 1983 and 1999, you are a millennial, regardless of what your politics is. So I think that's important to understand. Millennial is not a political ideology. It's a designation of a generation. And actually, in terms of numbers, we are the biggest generation. Uh, the baby boomers, that is people born between the mid 40s and the mid 60s, were previously the biggest generation numerically in the Western world, but now we millennials are the biggest group. By the way, these sort of terms they're not very clearly defined. There's no exact cutoff points. And they're Western phenomenon. It's mostly the United States and the United Kingdom and English speaking countries that use these terms. Um, but millennials, we're an interesting generation in the sense that we are the last generation to remember an age just before social media, but also the first generation to really experience the rise of social media. And of course, other generations, baby boomers and Generation X and so on, experience that as well. But we are the generation that's seen this transition. Now, generation, I think it's Generation Y or Generation Alpha will be people born in the 2000s and the 2010s. They will not have known a world before social media. So that I'm thinking of my little nephews and my niece, their children now, they will not know a world, they will not know what the world was like before social media. So that's going to be something that they will have a perspective on. Um, I think a lot about young people today, and by young people, I mean, like, say, university level, people between 18 and 21, right? They will have been hugely impacted by this pandemic. And Sometimes I think people are too cynical about the young, too dismissive. But really, when you think about it, the rest of us, millennials, baby boomers, Generation X, we all experience university in a certain way. It might have been good or bad, but we did experience it in a different way from what university students now are going through, where they have this learning from home, and really it has been incredibly disruptive. So it's all very well to say, oh, it's just students complaining, but this is something that has been profoundly impactful on their lives. And obviously it's impacted everyone's life. But I do feel sorry for them. I do have a lot of sympathy for that because the social life is basically out the window. And at that age, that's extremely important. So I don't think it's a trivial thing, and I do have enormous sympathy for them. I even saw a Time magazine edition actually have got it. I'll see if you just bear with me 1 second. Um, that's up there. Yeah, just bear with me 1 second. Here we go. So this is from June 2020, and this is their cover. 2020 Generation Pandemic. In every generation, there's profound events that shape that generation. For millennials, we think of 9/11, we think of the rise of social media, we think of the war on terror. Um, with this generation, definitely coronavirus is going to be part of it. Now, of course, the rest of us also experience that. I mean, the thing about generations, it's not like when you hit a certain age, and this is something I want to underline in this video. I personally find the study of generations interesting. However, it shouldn't be a case of, well, you reach a certain age and then you're no longer experiencing history or you're no longer shaped by its history. So when we talk about my generation, etc., that can be a little bit dismissive of the fact that we're all going through this. It doesn't matter if you're 85 or 15, you're living through coronavirus. So, in that sense, the gulf between generations is maybe not as much as it seems. And keeping with that thinking, I also feel very strongly that people shouldn't be restrained by their generation. I mean, you know, I'm a big believer that you should be able to live life to the fullest, whatever age you are. So if you're in your 80s, I don't think that life should just stop because maybe you're a bit slower than before. Maybe your eyesight isn't as great. Your hearing's a little bit off, but should that be a reason to just slow down? I don't think so. For me personally, how do I see 35? Well, I consider myself still quite a young man because I am. Uh, but I'm also aware that I'm not 25. And the thing I would describe about mid 30s, this is particularly thinking of younger people, maybe looking at this. By the time you get to your mid 30s, every decision you make in life will really matter. Now, it's not to say that if you make a mistake, then your life's over, but you are constantly aware that the decisions I make now could have an impact on the rest of my life. I mean, in terms of work, for example, you're thinking of pension schemes, you're thinking of saving money. Um, and families is another issue. I mean, I'm still single. I'm not a father. I don't have a wife. I don't have children. At the moment, it doesn't really bother me because I know that there's things in my own life I'm still sorting out. But maybe when I get to 40, that will weigh on my mind a bit more. Like at this point, really, if I want to be a father, I probably should think about getting married. Now, again, there are fathers who are first time fathers in their 50s and they're perfectly good fathers. Doesn't mean that that suddenly is gone. But I do think there's obvious things regarding think less so with men, but I'm thinking about health. With women, of course, it's a biological clock, and I've got female friends who are my age and a little bit younger, and I know that that's important to them. Um, women think about that. Probably most women, it's fair to say, do think at some point about motherhood. I don't think that's a sexist statement. I think it's just something that a lot of women do consider. So, with that in mind, for women, I think age, that's why it matters to them. Um, I understand that. I mean, obviously, I'm a man. I don't understand firsthand, but I can appreciate. I can appreciate why that would be something that's on their mind. Um, but I really feel strongly that just because you're no longer very young doesn't mean that life should slow down. I mean, I really don't like this idea of settling down. Why? Because to me, that is sort of like, well, I'm past my youth, so everything has to be settled now. I have to be married, I have to have a house, I have to. It just seems to me to be very defeat. It's very um like life's not over, but life's going to be mundane from now on. I don't see any reason why people who are married and have families can't also have exciting lives. Now, one thing about children is it goes without saying it's enormous responsibility. And I think it goes without saying that if you want to be a father or a mother, you need to be aware of the sacrifices that come with that. I mean, it can't be understated. So I have enormous respect. My brother and his wife are younger than me, but they are now parents of four children. And I have my disagreements with them, but I have huge respect for what they've done in terms of bringing up those children. And I think it's an enormous responsibility for anyone. Same with marriage. Um, but I know, I'm just being honest, I'm not quite ready for it yet. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. It's certainly not something I'm dismissing. I do see myself as being a father one day, in part because I don't want to become an old man and feel lonely. That's part of the reason. Um, but I really think that a fresh way to look at life and a healthy way to look at life is by looking at every new day as a new day. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I saw this it was like a news article about an old guy in China. He was in his early 80s and he had the body of like a 40-year-old guy, really toned, really, he clearly looked after himself, but he looked like an old man. I mean, he had a big, long white beard. He looked like an old man. But his philosophy was to treat every day like it is a new life. I don't know if he was a Buddhist or a Taoist or it was a religious aspiration, but that's the way he looked at things, and it was inspiring. You know, um, there is absolutely no reason that life should slow down just because you're at a certain age. Um, Obviously, time does matter. I mean, if you're still, for example, partying away in nightclubs when you're, I don't know, in your 60s and not taking life seriously, then maybe things aren't going in a stable direction. But then again, maybe, someone in that position has worked hard for the 30 years previously and then they can afford to do it. So I'm a big believer in not being ageist, not judging people from what age they are. I mean, in sports, this is a big thing. Uh, Obviously, a younger person is naturally going to be faster and more alert and so on. But if someone is physically in shape, if they're physically alert, if they really look after themselves, then why shouldn't they get opportunities later in life? Realistic opportunities. I follow boxing. I think of certain boxers that had big achievements beyond the age of 40. Now, in a combat sport, there are legitimate health and safety issues there. When I'd done my charity boxing, The participants who were over 40 had to get a little bit more rigorous testing than the rest of us. I was 29 at the time. Um, and that's, that's fine, that's understandable. But I don't see why it should suddenly rule people out. For one thing, people in developed countries are living longer now. So what was perceived to be old in the past is now not that old. For example, people in their 70s, at one point that would have been a normal point when people passed away. Now, if someone dies in their 70s, that's seen as too young to die. I don't want to be too blunt about it, but people are now living into their 80s and 90s more and more. That's a good thing, because it means more life, more opportunities. Of course, there's other complicated questions about health resources and so on and allocating for that. But I really think that you need to look at life in a fresh way and um, try to make the most of it. I mean, I don't have any great pearls of wisdom here. I'm not a wise old man, but what I would say to people who maybe in their late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, maybe they're very, very uncertain about life. What I would really, really underscore is don't get hung up on thinking about the time frame of things. Just do. Just do as much as you can. Don't become overburdened, don't become overwhelmed by it, but try and do as many different things as possible. Personally, I've had quite a colourful life and I'm quite happy about the fact that I've done different things. I haven't, spent 20 years working in an office. I've done different things. Now, I'll be honest, there's times I wasn't as stable as I would have liked to be. There's times I had serious financial anxiety. There are definitely things I would have done differently. But I think I've had quite an interesting life so far, and I'm very grateful for that. I don't believe I've had a mundane life. I've taught and worked on the other side of the world in a very different culture. I have moved house many times. I have pushed the boundaries for myself. I know I've done things, and there's so many other things I want to do. There's a billion other things I want to do. So, in some ways, I'm trying to look at life afresh. I'm 35. I'm not going to say life's just beginning, but it's certainly still in the early stages. That's how I see it. That's how I try to see it. For me, the social thing about the pandemic is a major issue because um, I would like a girlfriend. I would like to find someone, and I'm a little bit skeptical of online dating simply because A, there's a cost involved, and B, there are authenticity issues. I won't totally rule it out, but I would like to socialize with people my age more than I had opportunities to do before, and especially during the pandemic. As this eases off, as more vaccines are rolled out in this country, hopefully, social life will improve. So I want to be more in touch with my generation. I get on with a wide range of people. I'm good with children and I get on with older people, but I do want to be in touch with my generation because these are the people who will, in a sense, have not shared perspective, but they're my age. So that's it. What can I say? I think it's very important not to be allow our generation to sort of shackle us. So just because you're a certain age doesn't mean, oh well, you can't do that. But I think it's important to be just comfortable. And I've got a phone call now, so some things to consider.